He thought she didn't belong there. But in less than 10 minutes, he would wish he had never opened his mouth. The glass doors of the luxury dealership slid open with a soft hydraulic whisper as Sophia Bennett stepped inside, her reflection briefly stretching across the polished marble floor beneath her feet, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow through the towering windows that framed rows of gleaming vehicles priced higher than most homes. And yet she walked in as if she had every right to be there, calm, composed. Her simple cream sweater and faded jeans standing in quiet contrast to the tailored suits and designer heels scattered across the showroom. Conversations hushed just slightly as a few heads turned, not out of admiration, but curiosity edged with judgment, the kind that measured worth in seconds and dismissed just as quickly. And from behind a glossy black desk near the center display, a man in a sharp navy suit, tall, precise, the kind who had practiced his smile in mirrors, glanced up, his eyes scanning her from head to toe with the efficiency of someone trained to identify value instantly, and just as quickly, discard it, his lips tightening almost imperceptibly before he turned his attention back to a well-dressed couple beside him, his voice shifting into a warm, practiced tone reserved for those he deemed worthy, leaving Sophia standing alone in the quiet echo of indifference. But she didn't react. Didn't flinch, her gaze moving slowly across the showroom until it settled on a sleek midnight blue coupe positioned on a raised platform under perfect lighting, her eyes steady, thoughtful, as if she were not just looking at the car, but remembering something, calculating something. And when she finally took a step toward it, the sound of her shoes against the marble seemed louder than it should have been, drawing another glance from the salesman, this time laced with irritation, as if her mere presence disrupted the invisible order of the room. And still, Sophia said nothing, her hand lightly brushing the air near the car's polished surface. Without touching it, respecting it, understanding it in a way that had nothing to do with price tags or appearances. And somewhere behind her, a quiet chuckle slipped from another employee, low but intentional, followed by a whisper just loud enough to be heard. And the air shifted, subtle but undeniable. The kind of moment where dignity is tested not through confrontation, but through silence. And Sophia simply stood there, her posture unchanged, her expression unreadable, as if she had already seen how this would unfold, as if the outcome had been decided long before she ever walked through those doors. And in that stillness, something unspoken settled into the room, something that hadn't yet revealed itself, but was already on its way, quiet, inevitable, and unstoppable. The seconds stretched just enough for discomfort to settle in, the kind that did not need words to be understood, as Sophia remained beside the midnight blue coupe, her attention focused, unhurried, while the rest of the showroom seemed to orbit around her absence of urgency. And eventually the man in the navy suit excused himself from the well-dressed couple with a polite nod before approaching her with a measured stride, his expression composed but edged with impatience, the kind reserved for interruptions he did not consider worthwhile. And when he spoke, his voice carried a smooth professionalism that felt practiced rather than genuine, asking if she needed assistance, though the tone suggested he already knew the answer he expected. And Sophia turned slightly toward him, her eyes calm, her voice soft but clear as she asked about the coupe, her words simple, direct, without hesitation. And for a brief moment, something flickered across his face, surprise perhaps, before it settled into something colder, something dismissive, as he explained that the vehicle was a limited edition model, emphasizing each detail with subtle condescension, mentioning its price, its exclusivity, the waiting list, each word carefully placed like a barrier rather than an invitation. And when Sophia nodded, acknowledging him without reacting, he added that appointments were typically required for serious buyers, his gaze briefly lowering to her shoes, then back up again, as if reinforcing an unspoken conclusion. And behind them, another employee slowed his pace just enough to listen, while the couple from earlier watched with polite curiosity, sensing the shift in tone even if they did not fully understand it. And still, Sophia did not retreat, did not apologize. She simply asked if it would be possible to see the interior, her voice unchanged, steady. And that was when the faintest trace of irritation surfaced in the man's posture, his shoulders tightening almost imperceptibly as he glanced toward the couple he had left behind, calculating, weighing value, and choosing again. And when he responded, his smile did not reach his eyes, explaining that the vehicle was currently being shown to other clients, though the car remained untouched on its platform, gleaming under perfect light, and the contradiction hung quietly in the air, undeniable yet unspoken, and a soft murmur rippled from somewhere behind. A whisper quickly suppressed, as if the room itself recognized the imbalance, and in that moment, Sophia's gaze shifted slightly, not away, but deeper, as if she had just confirmed something she already suspected, and when she spoke again, her words were fewer this time, asking if there was anyone else who could assist her, the question simple, but carrying a weight that the man did not fully grasp, and his response came quicker now, sharper, dismissing the idea with a polite firmness that bordered on refusal, assuring her that he was fully capable of handling all inquiries, though the emphasis suggested that this particular inquiry was not worth handling at all, and for the first time, a silence followed that did not feel neutral. It felt deliberate, as if the room was holding its breath, waiting for something unseen to surface, and Sophia stood there, her posture unchanged, her expression composed, but her stillness no longer passive. It had become a decision, quiet, controlled, and somewhere beneath the polished surface of the showroom, something had begun to shift, subtle at first, but certain, like the first crack in glass that no one notices until it is too late. The tension no longer hid beneath politeness. It settled openly into the space between them, quiet but unmistakable, as Sophia held her ground with a stillness that felt intentional rather than uncertain, and the man in the navy suit exhaled slowly, as if deciding how much time he was willing to waste on a situation he had already judged, his fingers adjusting the cuff of his sleeve with precise control before he spoke again, this time lowering his voice slightly, not out of respect, but to keep the moment contained, explaining that their dealership specialized in a very specific clientele, the kind who understood the level of commitment required for purchases of this caliber. And while his words were technically polite, the implication was not. It was clear, sharp, and designed to push her out without the need for confrontation. And somewhere behind them, the couple he had left earlier shifted uncomfortably, their interest fading into something closer to unease, while another employee pretended to reorganize brochures that did not need organizing, his ears tuned to every word. Because everyone in the room could feel it now, the imbalance, the quiet dismissal unfolding in real time, and Sophia listened without interrupting, her gaze steady, absorbing every detail not as someone being corrected, but as someone taking note. And when he finished, expecting compliance, expecting retreat, she simply nodded once, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement, and then she spoke again, her tone unchanged, asking if the dealership accepted direct purchases without financing. A question so straightforward it momentarily broke the rhythm he had carefully constructed, and for a fraction of a second, he hesitated, caught between answering honestly and maintaining control of the situation. And that hesitation was enough for the room to notice, enough for the silence to deepen. And when he responded, his voice regained its structure, explaining that of course they did. But such transactions required verification, documentation, appointments arranged in advance. Each condition layered carefully, like gates meant to close before she could step through, and Sophia listened, then tilted her head ever so slightly, as if considering not his words, but the intention behind them. And when she spoke again, it was quieter this time, almost gentle, asking if there was any reason her request could not be processed today, and the question landed differently, not confrontational, not defensive, but precise, and it forced him to answer in a way he had been avoiding. And that was when the shift became visible, his patience thinning, his composure tightening into something sharper, more direct, as he finally allowed the underlying judgment to surface, explaining that transactions of this magnitude were typically handled with clients who presented themselves accordingly, his eyes briefly scanning her appearance again, no longer subtle, no longer hidden, and the words hung there, heavier now, impossible to ignore, and somewhere behind them, the faintest sound of a breath being held echoed through the showroom, because everyone understood what had just been said without it needing to be repeated, and still, Sophia did not react the way he expected. There was no embarrassment, No anger, no attempt to defend herself. Instead, she simply looked at him for a moment longer, her expression calm, almost thoughtful, as if confirming something final, something she no longer needed to question. And then she reached into her bag, not quickly, not dramatically, but with the same quiet certainty she had carried since the moment she walked in. And the movement alone was enough to draw every eye in the room, subtle at first, then complete, as conversations faded. Footsteps slowed, and attention gathered around a moment no one could yet explain, but everyone could feel, because something had just shifted again, and this time, it was no longer subtle. Her fingers moved with quiet precision as she reached into her bag, not rushed, not hesitant, but deliberate, and the subtle motion seemed to pull the entire room inward, as if every conversation, every distraction, every passing glance had been silently redirected toward that single moment. And the man in the navy suit watched her now with a different kind of attention, no longer dismissive, but cautious, though he did not yet understand why, his posture straightening slightly as if preparing for something he could not name. And when Sophia withdrew her hand, she did not immediately reveal what she held, instead letting the silence stretch just a fraction longer, her gaze steady on him, her expression composed, as if giving him one final opportunity to reconsider everything he had just said, everything he had just implied. But he did not take it, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly as he maintained his stance, waiting, expecting perhaps a form of proof he could easily dismiss. And that was when she placed it gently on the polished surface beside them, a single card, black, unadorned except for a subtle metallic edge that caught the light in a way that was impossible to ignore. And for a second, nothing happened, no one moved, no one spoke, because recognition does not always arrive instantly. Sometimes it arrives in layers, in slow realization, and the man's eyes dropped to the card, his focus narrowing, his expression shifting not dramatically, but enough for the change to be seen by those watching, because this was not something he could categorize quickly, not something that fit neatly into the assumptions he had already made. And his hand hovered for just a moment before he picked it up, careful now, his earlier confidence replaced by a measured uncertainty. And as he turned it slightly, the reflection of the showroom lights gliding across its surface, something inside him recalculated, quietly, rapidly. And behind him, one of the employees leaned ever so slightly closer, his curiosity no longer hidden, while the couple who had once been the center of attention now stood still, their interest fully redirected, sensing that whatever was unfolding had shifted far beyond a simple sales interaction. And Sophia said nothing. She did not explain, did not elaborate. She simply stood there, her presence unchanged, allowing the moment to reveal itself without interference. And that was when the first crack appeared, not in the room, but in the man's composure, a flicker in his eyes, a pause in his breath, as if the weight of the object in his hand had suddenly become heavier than expected, not physically, but symbolically, and the silence deepened, thick enough to feel, as if the showroom itself had recognized that something irreversible had just begun, something that could not be undone with a polite apology or a practiced smile. And for the first time since she had walked in, the balance of the room shifted, subtle but undeniable, and it did not shift because she raised her voice or demanded respect. It shifted because she did not need to, because sometimes power does not announce itself. It simply appears and waits. The weight of the moment settled fully now, no longer subtle, no longer hidden beneath polite tones or practiced professionalism. As the man in the navy suit stared at the card in his hand, his mind moving faster than his expression could follow, recognizing what it represented, what it implied, and more importantly, what it revealed about the mistake he had just made. And when he finally looked up at Sophia again, the shift was undeniable. The confidence that had once framed his posture now, replaced with something far more careful, far more aware, his voice adjusting instinctively as he spoke, softer now, measured, asking if she would prefer to move to a private office to continue the discussion, the offer coming too quickly, too suddenly to feel natural. And the room noticed, because moments ago he had been unwilling to offer even basic assistance. And now his entire demeanor had changed, not gradually, but instantly, like a switch flipped by something he could not ignore. And Sophia did not respond immediately, her eyes resting on him with quiet clarity, as if observing not just his words, but the transformation behind them. And for a brief second, the silence returned, heavier than before, because this time it carried understanding, not uncertainty, and behind them, the employees who had once whispered now stood still, their earlier amusement replaced by a tension they could not disguise. While the couple who had been waiting shifted slightly, their attention fixed completely on the exchange, no longer customers, but witnesses. And when Sophia finally spoke, her voice remained calm, unchanged, as if nothing in the room had altered at all. She asked a simple question: whether the dealership required all customers to meet a certain standard before being treated with respect. And the words landed with precision, not raised, not emotional, but exact. And the man hesitated, just long enough for the answer to become obvious before he even spoke, his lips parting, then closing again, as if searching for a response that would undo what had already been done. But there was none, because some moments cannot be corrected, only revealed. And as he stood there, caught between explanation and realization, the balance of the room shifted further, tilting away from him, away from the authority he had once carried so easily, and toward the quiet presence that had never once demanded attention, yet now held all of it. And Sophia reached forward slightly, not to take the card back, but to steady it where it rested, her fingers brushing the surface for just a second, grounding the moment. And then she spoke again, not louder, not sharper, but clearer, stating that she had come prepared to make a full purchase that day, without financing, without negotiation, simply because she liked the car. And the simplicity of that statement carried more weight than any display of wealth could have, because it stripped away every assumption he had made, every judgment he had relied on, leaving only the truth of what stood before him. And the room fell into a deeper silence, the kind that does not need to be announced, because everyone could feel it, the unmistakable realization that the roles had reversed, not through confrontation, not through force, but through something far more powerful, something that had been present from the very beginning, waiting for the right moment to be seen. The words lingered in the air long after she finished speaking, not because they were loud, but because they were undeniable, and the man in the navy suit felt it now, the full weight of everything that had just unfolded, pressing quietly against the confidence he once carried so easily, his mind racing through every possible response, every carefully trained phrase meant to recover control. But none of them seemed to fit anymore, because the situation had moved beyond sales, beyond policy, beyond anything he had prepared for. And when he finally spoke again, his voice carried a different tone entirely, no longer authoritative, but cautious, almost measured with restraint, as he assured her that of course the dealership would be honored to assist with her purchase, the words coming out with practiced smoothness, yet lacking the certainty they once held. And Sophia listened without interruption, her expression unchanged, as if she had already heard the apology before it was spoken, as if the outcome had already been decided long before he attempted to correct it. And behind them, the employees who had once watched with quiet amusement now stood rigid, their earlier assumptions dissolving into something far more uncomfortable, a recognition that what they had witnessed was not just a mistake, but a reflection of something deeper, something that could not be undone with a shift in tone. And the couple nearby exchanged a glance, subtle but telling, as if silently acknowledging that they had just seen a moment of truth unfold in real time. And still, Sophia did not rush. She did not seize the moment with triumph or satisfaction. Instead, she remained exactly as she had been from the beginning, calm, composed, her presence steady in a room that no longer knew how to read her. And after a brief pause, she extended her hand slightly, not in demand, but in quiet expectation. And the man hesitated for just a fraction of a second before placing the card back into her palm, his movements careful now, respectful in a way that had not existed minutes earlier. And as she took it, she held it for a moment before slipping it back into her bag, the action simple, yet final, as if closing a chapter that had already served its purpose. And when she looked at him again, there was no anger in her eyes, no resentment, only clarity, the kind that does not need to raise its voice to be understood. And she spoke once more, her tone steady, asking if the vehicle was still available for purchase today. the question returning the moment to its original purpose, but now under entirely different terms, and the man nodded quickly, almost too quickly, assuring her that that arrangements could be made immediately, that anything she needed would be handled without delay, and the shift was complete now, unmistakable, the balance of power no longer hidden, no longer questioned, and the room felt it, every person present aware that something irreversible had just taken place, not through confrontation, not through force, but through the quiet unveiling of truth. And as the man gestured toward the vehicle, inviting her to proceed, there was a hesitation in his movement, not from uncertainty, but from the understanding that the rules had changed and that he was no longer the one in control. And for the first time since she had walked through those glass doors, the space around her felt different, not because she had demanded respect, but because it had finally been forced to reveal itself. The subtle shift in authority settled deeper into the room as the man stepped slightly aside, gesturing toward the coupe with a newfound restraint, his movements careful, almost rehearsed in their politeness, but lacking the ease he once carried. And Sophia walked forward without hesitation, her pace unhurried, her presence steady, as if nothing about the moment had changed for her, even though everything around her had. And as she approached the vehicle, the polished surface reflected not just her figure, but the quiet transformation of the space behind her, where employees now stood straighter, voices lowered, movements more deliberate, as though the room itself had adjusted its expectations. And when she reached the car, she paused, her eyes tracing the contours of the design, the clean lines, the precision of its craftsmanship, her attention genuine, not performative, as if this had always been the reason she came, and not the situation that had unfolded around her. And the man remained a step behind, waiting, no longer leading, his role reversed in a way that did not need to be announced. And when he spoke again, his voice carried a controlled respect, offering to open the door, to provide details, to assist in any way she preferred, each word carefully chosen, as if trying to rebuild something that had already been broken. And Sophia nodded once, allowing him to proceed. And as the door opened with a soft mechanical precision, the interior revealed itself in quiet elegance, leather, stitching, the subtle scent of new craftsmanship filling the space. And for a moment, the scene returned to what it should have been from the beginning, a simple interaction, a customer exploring a purchase, but the weight of everything that had happened lingered beneath it, shaping every movement, every glance, every breath. And behind them, the couple who had once been prioritized now stood in stillness, watching with an awareness they had not carried before, as if they too had learned something without being directly involved. And one of the employees shifted his stance, his earlier confidence replaced with a quiet humility, eyes lowered just enough to avoid meeting Sophia's gaze. Because recognition does not always come with words, sometimes it comes with silence. And as Sophia leaned slightly to observe the interior more closely, her hand resting lightly on the edge of the door, she asked a question about the engine specifications, her tone neutral, focused, and the man responded immediately, providing details with precision, but this time without embellishment, without superiority, just information, clear and respectful. And the exchange moved forward, smoother now, but different, undeniably different, because it was no longer built on assumption, but on correction. And as the seconds passed, the room continued to hold its quiet tension, not out of discomfort, but out of understanding, because everyone present knew that they were witnessing more than a transaction. They were witnessing the moment where perception had been forced to confront reality, and for the first time, the dealership no longer felt like a place divided by appearance, but a place momentarily united by a single undeniable truth, one that had been there from the beginning, waiting patiently to be seen. The atmosphere no longer resembled a showroom transaction. It had transformed into something quieter, more reflective, as if every polished surface now held the echo of what had just been revealed. And as Sophia stepped back from the open door of the coupe, her gaze lingering for a brief moment before she straightened, the decision already settled within her. The man in the navy suit waited, not interrupting, not assuming, his posture restrained, his earlier authority replaced with a careful attentiveness that bordered on respect. And when she spoke, her voice carried the same calm certainty it had held from the beginning. confirming that she would take the vehicle as it was. No additional features, no negotiations, just a straightforward purchase, and the simplicity of her words seemed to carry more weight now than any complex transaction ever could, because it stripped away every barrier that had been placed before her, and in doing so, it exposed the truth of the moment in its purest form, and the man nodded quickly, almost instinctively, his response immediate as he assured her that the paperwork would be prepared right away, his tone precise, professional, but now grounded in something real, something earned rather than performed, and as he stepped away to initiate the process, his movements carried a subtle urgency, not of pressure, but of correction, as if each step was an attempt to realign himself with the standard he had failed to meet earlier, and behind them, the employees who had once observed from a distance now moved with quiet efficiency, their earlier detachment replaced with a shared awareness that the moment required more than routine behavior. It required acknowledgement, even if unspoken, and the couple who had been waiting exchanged another glance before turning slightly away, their interest fading not out of disinterest, but out of respect, as if they understood that what had just occurred did not belong to them. It belonged to something larger, something more meaningful than a purchase. And Sophia remained where she stood, her posture relaxed, her expression composed, as if the outcome had never been in doubt, as if she had simply allowed the situation to unfold exactly as it needed to. And when the man returned with the initial documents, he approached with a measured pace, offering them with both hands, a subtle gesture that carried more significance than it appeared, and as Sophia accepted them, her eyes moved briefly across the page before she signed without hesitation, her signature steady, deliberate, and final, and in that quiet motion, the last trace of uncertainty dissolved from the room, leaving only clarity behind. And as the pen was set down, a silence followed, not uncomfortable, not tense, but complete, as if the moment had reached its natural conclusion without needing to be announced. And in that silence, something deeper settled into the space, something that would remain long after she walked out, a reminder not of what had been purchased, but of what had been revealed, and for those who had witnessed it, that understanding would not fade easily, because moments like this do not simply pass. They stay, quiet, persistent, shaping the way the world is seen long after the doors close. The final signature settled into place with quiet certainty, the ink drying against the page as if marking not just a transaction, but the closing of something far more significant. And as the documents were carefully gathered and set aside, the man in the navy suit straightened, his posture no longer carrying the same rigid confidence from earlier, but something more grounded, more aware, and when he spoke, his voice held a sincerity that had not existed before, thanking her for her business. Though the words felt smaller than the moment itself, as if language could not quite reach what had truly taken place, and Sophia simply nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without lingering on it, her attention already moving forward, because for her, this had never been about proving anything. It had only been about being treated as she always should have been. And as she turned slightly toward the entrance, the soft echo of her footsteps across the marble floor returned, but this time it carried a different weight, no longer overlooked, no longer dismissed. Each step noticed, each movement followed with a quiet respect that had replaced the earlier judgment, and the employees who had once watched from a distance now stood with a subtle stillness, their eyes lowered just enough to show understanding without needing to speak, while the couple near the display shifted aside instinctively, creating space for her path, their expressions thoughtful, as if they had just witnessed something that would stay with them long after they left. And as Sophia reached the glass doors, she paused for just a brief moment, not to look back, not to revisit what had happened, but simply to take in the stillness that now filled the room, a stillness that had replaced the quiet assumptions from before. And then she stepped forward, the doors opening once again with that same soft mechanical whisper. But this time, the sound seemed clearer, more defined, as if even the space itself recognized the difference. And outside, the late afternoon lights stretched across the pavement, warm and steady, mirroring the calm presence she had carried throughout. And behind her, the showroom remained silent for a moment longer than necessary, not out of discomfort, but out of reflection, because what had happened there could not be undone or forgotten. It had been seen, understood, and quietly acknowledged by everyone who stood within those walls. And as the man in the navy suit remained near the center of the room, his gaze lingering toward the now closed doors, there was a shift in his expression, subtle but lasting, the kind that does not come from losing a sale, but from realizing something deeper, something about perception, about judgment, about the cost of underestimating someone based on what is easily seen. And the room slowly returned to motion, conversations resuming, footsteps continuing. But beneath it all, there was a quiet awareness that had not been there before, a recognition that respect is not something that can be selectively given. And that day, without raising her voice, without demanding attention, Sophia had left behind something far more valuable than any purchase, a reminder that dignity does not need to announce itself. It simply stands, steady and unshaken, waiting for the world to recognize it.